This would probably be the last one of the day. After I did the last one, was waiting for it to go up. I was just sometimes I simply sort of meditate within my own state of being, and I was sort of chuckling at myself when I realized it's like being in all places at once in the cosmos, because time doesn't exist for us, only energy. Okay. So we are the energy that represents any single data point that is experienced at any given singularity of information we are experiencing. As I mentioned when I made some comments to Robert David Steele, and I was humbled by he liked the comment, as I thought he worked in intelligence with the CIA, so he understands what it means to experience the data. Okay, and I'll share with you on the level at which it actually happens. I can shake your hand and download all your information. Okay, and then experience what all that information represents. That actually is all of the data that represents all of the data that is recorded in your DNA throughout your entire lifespan. I'm talking about your entire lifespan. All your previous incarnations that go back to the very beginning of your soul. Okay? Imagine that. So we are experiencing the information. Okay? It's one of the benefits you have when you realize your source. Okay? So that means that source can be wherever source wants to be at any given single point of now time. Remember, I think I mentioned in a previous video, we are what love is in living spirit. So wherever you find love in living spirit, you'll find us, which is a reflection of the light, which is what love is. So we love to go fast. That's why we're here and then gone. Bye. So when we go wherever we're called, we're always going to restore the light wherever the light needs to be restored. Okay, so we can use the symbolic language of English, for example. I think I may have mentioned this in a previous video. If I would have jumped in here, say 100,000 years ago, I would be using a completely different symbolic form of language to communicate with those beings that are here during that particular time, because any time that you're going to communicate what I call infinite ancient knowledge or spiritual science, mathematics and physics, then you have to be able to communicate it in a language that they can perceive, put it together through their own life experiences. So we can use the symbolic language of English to use terms most people are aware of, like bits and bytes. That's why sometimes you hear me use words that culture has said are unacceptable. All they are is sound. I use the word, for example, fuck, because it's a useful word. It's emphasis. Most people, when they hear it, understand why you use it the way in which you use it. So it has symbolic meaning. The sound has symbolic meaning. That's what the communication is meant to communicate. So communication is, in fact, a coherent art form, depending on the target audience, okay? So we have bits and bytes, are units of measurement in mathematics based on a numbering system of energy allocation. So I am a free energy allocator of light to expand the higher energy awareness in others, because it naturally happens. Remember, I shared with you the experience I had coming out of the elevator in Hilo, Hawaii, and there were 4 police officers getting ready to walk in a courtroom, and I could see very what I call flat energy. I call it flat because you're aware of what they're aware of. Let's put it that way. So you're aware they're in a lower energy state. So I come across and have a big smiley face because my energy's way up in a state of love and joy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ready to go dance and play drums and bring the spirit out in Mother Nature. And you could see the smiles on their faces as their energy went up. So when children learn through others how light works that way, you're a powerful magnet. That's why I normally work with children, okay? Because then I don't have to spend so much time and energy trying to break through, because what it really is breaking through all the electrical resistance, because their consciousness is held captive to the lower frequencies that they're holding on to as a result of low frequency experiences recorded in their unconscious memory. So the idea is to raise it up to operate on the conscious, creative imagination and memory in which they are experiencing the reality that they're experiencing, which is creating as they're experiencing it. They realize their consciousness is not held captive to something lower held by a clock, time, card, programming. That's when you tie the electrons with a clock. When children learn through others how light works. So I was thinking of Misha's little daughter, okay, a girl age 4. And this gets into what I said in a previous video, where looks can be deceiving, okay? So for example, my normal attire, because I love the Hawaiian Islands, I used to have a whole slew of flower shirts with all kinds of colors, okay? Wearing a different set of trunks matched to the flowers, in which matches the aloha of being in a state of love and joy, so that the energy that is represented by what I'm experiencing is just translated through all the flowers of what you see in nature, which is to say, I am living spirit in living energies. That's the communication of a spiritual student and a spiritual teacher. So her daughter was named Anu, not coincidentally, who was age 4. She was telepathic. She could also teleport. She teleported right in front of me one day when she was in front of me, and the next thing I know, hey, that was pretty good. Let's do that again. Okay? We're not surprised by these things because we already know what's possible. See? We have a frame of reference. So I had a conversation with her one evening, and this is where we get into what I call knowledge and age. Age based on what? What I call cultural programming. As John Gato, another teacher out of New York City, used to call it dumbing us down, or what's called the social electrical engineering of consciousness. Okay? So I had a conversation with her one night, and I wrote this down because this was a conversation I had with her for about 3 hours, just her and I. Both her mother and father were gone. They were going out shopping and running some errands. So this gave me an opportunity to have a really deep conversation with this little girl, because now this is where the truth comes out. When she realizes how much you love her, because she can feel the energy that you are, okay? She will tell you the truth of what she's feeling and what she's thinking, because she can trust you, because she knows you're not going to harm her. Instead, you are giving her love. Love is trusting energy. That's why teachers who teach through love means the student will trust your energy. So when that conversation that I had with her, what I was amazed by it is that, and this again is another measurement, okay, was how advanced in intelligence this 4-year-old little girl really was. I realized that she had not even had that level of intelligent conversation with her own parents and anybody else. That tells me a lot about her genetics. That tells me a lot about her soul, which is one of the reasons why it was so painful for me, because her mother was so sexually abused and emotionally harmed throughout all of her childhood, and why she grabbed me to see if I could help her. And that's obviously a difficult challenge, because we're talking about somebody who is a hybrid, okay? So I knew from her blood factor, for example, as I mentioned before, about a hybrid, okay? So that was my point about looks can be deceiving on the visible light spectrum, because they use holographic technology to overlay, which means they're masqueraders. That's one of the things I realized as a child when I would look at other beings that look like me, but they're not me. Okay? They're not living spirit in which they give love and service to others to attract more light and go faster. So it's like reading the environment, which is mapping the energy field, which is mapping all the DNA that exists within the field. What you're doing is you're mapping data. You're collecting data. So you're collecting data at such a high rate of speed because your vortex, the heart, is the processor essentially. Your state of awareness and your soul connection allows you to map an enormous amount of information that you're reading in the field, which represents past, present, and future, because an empath is going to absorb all the energies, which are all the frequencies, represents all the data that's being processed and all that light in which it's held. That's why Trump mentioned about an invisible war. And an invisible war is a spiritual war. So when I knew right around age 4 and 5, based on just reading my first newspaper, I knew this was a spiritual war, which is an energy war, okay? So this is not my first rodeo. So when you come into an energy system, it helps to have advanced knowledge about, quote unquote, signals intelligence. The ability to be aware of what they are aware of, what they're being aware of, what we are aware of. It's sort of like I'm aware of what you're aware of, but you're not aware of what I'm aware of, which means you're not aware that I'm aware of what you're aware of. Okay? That's called a higher state of awareness, which means I'm processing an enormous amount of data that represents all the data that is flowing through all the waves of all the frequencies, right? Remember, a receiver, a sound receiver, and a transmitter, that's the benefit of an avatar. Okay? Is to be able to read the field and then adjust accordingly to the environmental factors. That's the genius of the female mitochondria. So that means we are processing more data at a higher rate of speed. That's right. We run a faster processor in a magnetic light vortex in living spirit. So we are energy to help others advance their knowledge. And that's why it hurts sometimes when I used to get comments when I put stuff up of sharing information. They think that's an ego, okay? When in fact what it is we're expanding the knowledge based on what we're aware of. So I put this down as seeking knowledge instead of seeking money. Remember I mentioned the example where And I use myself as an example because those are my experiences from which others can learn from how it works. It's what it is. It's what it means to be a student and a teacher. So, for example, I could have, they offered me a PhD position to stay at the University of Arkansas. That's not important to me. Okay? I have other things that are more important to do than that, because it's like you're aware that you're on a mission status. You're always on the job. You have a job to do because you realize what we're doing here and why we're here doing what it is that we do. Okay? So, when you're seeking money instead of knowledge, that's going in reverse because you're losing speed, not gaining speed, because you're holding on to electrons. You're holding on to the electricity that otherwise could be used to help a community thrive. And that's what they do. The big international bankers, the big vampires are holding on to trillions and billions of dollars that are not in circulation. So everybody's held captive to the bigger vampires. So when they choose to distribute more out into the system, then the current flows at a higher rate of speed, doesn't it? That's right. Unless they're held to the time clocks. How are we going to rise above the time clocks to go into no time when everybody is free energy? I told Robert David Steele, this civilization will never advance without free energy. Because that's what I am. I'm free energy. I don't charge anybody for my energy. I give them love for free. That's what unconditional love is. That girl up there, that 6-star female MERKABA, she doesn't charge anybody for that energy. And look what that energy can do on the planet. Look how many crops can be grown which represent food that people thus sell into the supermarket, and she's the one who's providing the sun for which those crops grow. This is what it means about the evolution of your intelligence, is to be able to understand the bigger power players in the cosmos that are providing what is needed for us to learn from how it works. So that's what I measured as a child, and why when we measure higher consciousness evolution through the speed of the electricity to power the light. So we're measuring student learning is measuring the speed of their vibration. Their core frequency identity vibration. To grow, you're a MERKABA. Look at her MERKABA. Look how big her MERKABA is. Look how much energy she's given us. That's what it means to be an energy giver. Is to be a son like her. Imagine that. Or like Gaia, the great living spirit of Mother Earth. Everything she provides us. So that's the whole point. That's why I love to work with children. Because it starts there, because they represent our future. That's why I spend most of my time with children. Why I wanted to set up a school to work with children, so they're no longer held captive to the future that they don't want to pass on to their children. And that's what I measured as a child, is how do we stop the recycling and the harvesting of energy from one generation to the next. Starts right here, right now. Have a great day. Be good to yourselves. I love you all. We're headed in the right direction. We secured the timeline. Bye now.